Hi, my name is Donia and I'm from Newport Beach, California. This is an image I took last summer of the harbor by my house. In high school, I often went here after school to spend time alone, as I enjoy watching the ship sail by slowly and sun reflect on the small tides of the bay. This piece of nature means a lot to me and I can't wait to return to its serenity in less than 2 weeks. Ever since I was a little girl, I have been blessed to have traveled to places as close as Mexico and as far as China. I would always travel with my family, therefore my perspective on nature was molded from an early age to remind me of my grandparents, parents, and brother. Although my grandparents started to travel less, my grandmother has had the most profound impact on my strong relationship with nature. These are some of the seasonal wildflowers that my grandmother tends to in her garden. Every time I visit her, she never fails to grasp my hand and slowly stroll with me through her flower field. My grandmother instills so much pride in her garden, and seeing her eyes light up while describing each individual breed to me will never leave my memory. My most recent family trip was to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, pictured above. Because Mexico is only a short plane ride away, my grandparents were able to come with us last December. I captured this image while sitting on a boat next to my grandmother, resting my head on her shoulder with her hand in my lap. In this moment, the rest of my family seemed distant, and it felt as though the world consisted of only my grandmother and I. The moment that I had experienced in Mexico with my grandmother outlines the importance of nature to me. Nature has the power to silence the rest of the world, even if you are not alone. This belief of mine was strengthened upon a recent school trip to Ireland last May, where I had many similar serene experiences, even though I was physically never alone. As I have grown older, I have transitioned from only family trips to ones accompanied by my friends. On this trip to Ireland, our itinerary was solely based in nature. This is an image of the monastic ruins in Wicklow Mountains in Glendalough, a famous tourist location. Monasteries were based on tranquility and simplicity that Thoreau describes in Where I Lived and What I Lived For. Having a completely different form of scenery than the beaches at home, Ireland exposed me to some of the most beautiful green natural forms of nature. This image is of a pathway to a little chapel in Ireland. Stumbling upon this site was very refreshing and kept me in awe for a short while. This moment was very special to me as my two best friends and I had wandered off to this location during our free time. Experiencing the rawness of nature with the people you love makes nature so much more beautiful. My friends and I had immersed ourselves in a culture completely different from what we are used to and enjoyed every moment of it in complete silence, purely through our senses. Walking through this forest in Ireland was probably the highlight of my trip. I was feeling homesick towards the middle of the trip and decided to take an early morning hike by our hotel. I was impressed to find this little spot right outside of our room with a pond at the end of it, reminding me of the bay by my house. This experience proved to me that nature can be comforting through its consistency, no matter where you are. Although my trip to Ireland was a staple in my relationship with nature through travel, I have been to many other beautiful places around the world which have also contributed to my respect and love for the natural world and its blessings to humans. Even a city as bustling and loud as New York has the ability to provide humans with the serenity of nature. Surprisingly enough, this image is of New York City. I remember wandering through Central Park with my mother in search of a vacant, tranquil spot where we could sit down and eat our lunch together in silence. After walking for a solid amount of time, we decided this was the perfect location to stop and take a break from our busy trip exploring the buildings and artistic history of New York. My traveling experiences have been equally split amongst vacations with my friends and family to beautiful tropical locations, as well as trips accompanying my parents to Europe for their business. Having parents who manufacture clothes in Italy and France, I have been lucky enough to explore these parts of Europe in a both touristy and local manner. My favorite place in Europe has definitely become Venice. Reminiscing on the image above, it is not hard to understand why I love Venice as much as I do. The uniqueness of the city built on water is fascinating to the common tourist. However, I have a deeper appreciation for the city. I find Venice to have been the one comforting city throughout my travels in Italy, and for one reason only, which is the connection to water. Every time I return from my travels around the world, I am glad to be back by my familiar landscape of beaches. Growing up next to crashing waves and air filled with the scent of salt from the ocean, I easily find comfort in any body of water that resembles home, even as different as the culture surrounding it may be. As I drive down Pacific Coast Highway every day when I am home, I slightly crack the windows in my car and allow the salty air to seep in through the gaps. No matter what time of day it is or who I am with, nature never fails to rid me of any anxiety, stress, or confusion. There's something truly beautiful about the rawness of nature and the silence that accompanies it. All in all, it is important to remember what our Earth was like before industrialization and human colonization. Nature is consistent, always there for humans to turn to in times of need, and purely beautiful in its imperfections and untouched form. As Ralph Waldo Emerson brilliantly stated, nature is made to conspire with spirit to emancipate us.